genre, music theory, interviews, music theology, primitive rhythm machine.
Holy cow, everybody. It must be a Christmas miracle. We got Steve and me in the same studio again for an episode of Primitive Rhythm Machine.
Hi, everyone.
How you been doing, Steve?
It's just one of those things where we don't want the episode to be about that. So let's get right into our episode.
All right. Well, greetings aside, this episode we're going to be talking about irregular Christmas music. And what I mean by irregular Christmas music is either the song is not a standard, what you would consider to be a Christmas standard, or the presentation wouldn't be what you would expect for a Christmas song. Just Steve's giving me pitching signals here as I'm talking. Just the nods and the shake-offs. And maybe some Christmas music history. So Steve, let's just start out. Like, how would you define Christmas music?
It's like trying to define like a Christian song or anything. I mean, there's just so many ways to look at it. Is A Miracle on 34th Street or whatever the number is that I'm probably getting wrong because I've never seen the movie.
No, you're right.
Is that a Christmas movie because it has Santa Claus in it? Or is it not a Christian movie because it came out in July of that year or something like that? You know, it's like there's so many different ways you can slice this pie that it's like
slice the pie. Are we in special ops now? I
think so. It's math class more like. But you know, it's like whatever. If you're talking about Christmas music, you can't come into it and say, "Oh, I know what Christmas music is." And if you say, you know, "Grandma Got Run Over by a Reindeer" isn't Christmas music because it's a parody song. It's not an actual. It's not a parody. First of all, it's an actual song. It's not really
humorous, but
yeah. So it's like you can't come into it with any type of attitude. And if someone brings in, you know, "Oh, well, I think Kashmir is a Christmas song because, you know, the melody is very reminiscent." I mean, listen to the person and, you know, try to figure out exactly what they're saying, but let's not argue about what Christmas music is or isn't. I guess the only thing that wouldn't be Christmas music to me would be songs that are explicitly anti-Christian.
Yeah, I could see that. I personally, I've been running into the whole definition debate myself because I've been making a playlist lately for the Geek Devotions family. And I'm like, okay, so what is and what isn't a Christmas song? Because I've been, you know, there's been moments in my lifetime where I've gone to churches where people would be like, "Oh, well, this song isn't about the nativity. It's got nothing to do with the reason for Christmas, and thus it is not a Christmas song." And that's what sparked the whole question, like, what defines a Christmas song? Is it something that's about the birth of Christ? Or can it be a song that is about an experience that happened during the Christmas season?
Yeah, or something that is like cultural Christianity. I mean, that's
right.
Part of Christmas, sadly enough, but that's right. You know, that's what we have.
And so it really kind of stretches that out there. Like, do we have to be like music subgenres and start adding subgenres to Christian music? Like, this isn't nativity Christmas, this is cultural Christmas music, or is a situation
white Christmas, black Christmas music?
Is it's maybe
I meant like white metal and black metal. You know how people
no I got you.
It has nothing to do with skin color. But what I just said I know, but terribly racist. We can edit that in post.
I'm not gonna, because it gave me a great idea to start searching Kirk Franklin's back catalog to add to my Christmas my Christmas playlist. I saw him during the Thanksgiving parade. I didn't even know he was still making music.
Yeah, I think he doesn't stop.
Well, God bless the guy. He's got a mission, and boy is he on it. So I think with that said, though, when I'm throwing out Christmas music to you, dear sweet listener, that's the definition I'm working with. Is it either is about the nativity, or it's about experiences during the Christmas season, or
snow.
anything that could be, because to be perfectly honest, I don't have enough hairs to split at this point. It's just like
I'd rather argue about other things than what is or isn't Christmas music.
Like the color of the coffee cup I get at Starbucks.
You get stuff at Starbucks? Still praying for you, bro.
I live in Washington State. It's like it's mandatory that I go to Starbucks like 3 times a week.
I guess that's like Dunkin' Donuts here.
We don't have those here.
I know. So there you go.
But no, I was more making the callback to the whole fiasco about the red Starbucks cup for Christmas. It's just like,
oh, that's right, yeah.
And the only reason why that sticks out in my mind is the pastor I was under at the time. Like, that was his life goal. It's just like, this is not important. But I digress. We're not here to talk about dumb things to argue about. We're here to talk about Christmas music, which is happy.
A smart thing to argue about.
Yes, the smart thing, SMRT smart.
Yes.
So what really kind of sent me down this rabbit trail initially was there's a Christian death grind band called Mangled Carpenter who re-released their Christmas album, Signed, and I got it. And I'm like, wow, this is pretty brutal music for Christmas. But Christian bands and some secular bands have been doing this for years. Like going back to, Jingle Bell Rock was an Irregular Christmas song at one point in time.
Yeah.
And some might even say that it was controversial because rock and roll used to be considered the devil's music. And I think it was about the time frame when it was originally released by the original artist, whom I don't know who that was initially.
Jingle Bell Rock was...
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that guy.
That one guy. Let's see what our co-host Google has to say about it. Bobby Helms, originally,
I was about to say,
back in 1957. So rock and roll had only been a music for less than a decade, because the first rock and roll song was "Rock Around the Clock" by Bill Haley and the Comets in 1949.
And see, we could argue about that as well.
Well, that's what's most commonly accepted as the first rock and roll song.
Unless you dig further, deeper, and you get to, the bluesy, rootsy, rocking and rolling type of stuff, even from the late 20s. But anyway, the episode is not about that.
Imagine that. You and me are kind of rabbit trailing left and right about music. Who would have thought that would have happened on an episode of Primitive Rhythm Machine? We
should do a podcast about us doing that.
Anyway, so Steve, you've been in the Christian music scene a little bit longer than myself. What's
longer than your life?
I don't think you're that much older than me.
I am. I'm really old.
You're not that old.
Okay. Do you remember the late 70s? I
wasn't alive in the late 70s.
My point. I remember things that happened before you were alive.
I get that. I'm not denying the fact that you're older than me. I'm just saying you're not that much older than me. You're not old enough to be my dad, is the point I'm making.
If I really wanted to be, I would have been.
Okay, that conversation's going to get gross. So let's bring it back to Christmas music. So what's the earliest point that you can remember where you were surprised by a rendition or a new presentation of a Christmas song, be it Christian or otherwise, where you're like, I would never have expected to see something like this?
Surprised? Probably would have been, like a Dr. Demento,
Hmm.
type of one of those songs where he would do Christmas episodes. And I had the little transistor radio, and I'd keep it under my pillow,
Oh, you were one of those
so
people.
my parents couldn't hear what I was listening to. But I mean, usually it would be like the ball game, or I would be listening to CBS Radio Mystery Theater or something, mundane. But then, Sunday nights would roll along, and you're like, let me just check out, see what Dr. Demento is playing. So I'm trying to think of if there's anything like a Christmas song that really stands out. Our third member, Google, is actually going to help me out here. Let's see.
While you're doing that, that just gave me an idea for a Christmas song talking about Dr. Demento to put on the Christmas playlist. So thank you for that, Steve.
Dr. Demento. You're welcome. The greatest Christmas novelty. Here we go. All right. I'm thinking I have it, but let me just check down here. Some of these are good. Oh boy. I think maybe the first time that I was actually surprised in a Christmas song.
Mm-hmm.
Like, hey, Christmas songs can be fun, and they're not just all, just talking about the Christmas, the nativity, or just talking about snow or whatever. I think it would be the Chipmunk song, and
Oh
when
yeah, that whole Christmas time is
time is here.
here.
Yeah, and when Alvin just says, I still want a hula hoop, and just the way he says hula hoop is, I mean, you could just play that and I would laugh, because it's just the way he did those voices, and the way he, Alvin, and the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
It made me think, okay, these are fun things. This can be fun, and that's okay. It's okay to have fun at Christmas. So I think if you're talking about like the first time I was like pleasantly surprised,
Mm-hmm.
that's probably that one. With Christian music, I think probably the one that jumps to mind is Deliverance's Silent Night, when you just get this beautiful guitar intro and Jimmy's beautiful voice starting out the song, and then it just kicks into this monster machine through the rest of the song, but it doesn't make it's not a mockery of the song. It's not
Right.
like, I mean, you get the pun, Silent Night, and it's heavy metal, but it's just good music, and it's just well done. And it was the type of thing where, like, okay, you can have heavy, hard stuff and still have it, be something. It was around the same time that Christian bands would put out like hymns, heavy metal hymns, and you'd have like Barren Cross doing the old Rugged Cross or whatever, and it would just be this heaviness to the songs, and I mean, about chords and things like that, and you just hit certain chords and you get that feeling. And sometimes it's like that when you're going to heavy metal. When I try to explain to people who don't like heavy metal, why would anyone like this? What's the draw to this music?
Mm-hmm.
And it's the aggression, and it's the power of it. And when you can turn that to heavenly things, it can have that type of an impact, where it's like, listening to 70s Christian, Jesus music, that's wonderful and beautiful too. But when you have something that's trying to convey, something powerful, and you have the music be powerful behind it, a lot of times that can really make the point, a little bit better, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Not to diminish those other songs. I mean, some of them are amazingly beautiful, and I don't think I'd want to hear heavy metal versions of some songs, but probably secretly I do.
I mean, I well, I'll get to my experience when you're done, but I
I'm
definitely.
done.
Oh, you are okay.
Yeah.
As far
I'm
as
hanging up now. See you later.
okay, bye.
You finish up the episode.
I hope everybody enjoyed today's episode. No, I didn't.
Happy New Year, everyone.
For me, the first time I got really genuinely surprised by a fun Christmas song, I think was it was in the 80s. And I don't know if you remember Bob Rivers Comedy Corp. They had put out a Christmas album
I
called
don't
A
think so.
Twisted Christmas. And it was a bunch of regular Christmas carols intermixed with some songs that were just their own songs and a skit or two, like a visit from St. Nicholson. um, but specifically, there's a song called "Wreck the Halls" that they did, and it's very much in the style of Twisted Sister. It's all about trashing the shopping malls during the Christmas, which was almost prophetic if you ever see later Black Friday security camera stuff being trampled. So I guess it's not as funny. At the time, it was hilarious, and I thought it was just fantastic. So that caught me off guard. My cousin Scott had showed that to me. He's like, "You gotta check this out."
Shout out to cousin Scott, yo.
Nah, he doesn't. He listens to country now. But at the time, he was dabbling. He was also the one who introduced me to Iron Maiden on their Fear of the Dark album set.
When are we going to do our country episode?
I can do a country episode, but we're not going to do it right now because I'm going to have to prep for that one.
Well, it would just be like 90% Johnny Cash, and then the other 10% would be probably a little bit more Johnny Cash. But
for Steve and my other podcast we do, Playing Games with Strangers, we made playlists for the characters we play, and for my character, the Keeper, my entire playlist I made for country. So I know me some country. But on the Christian side of things, Christian music takes a lot to really catch me off guard, especially when it comes to extreme metal. But in 2002, because I'd always made the joke, like, what would a death metal Christmas album sound like? Well, in 2002, I found out about that when the now defunct record label Sounds of the Dead Records put out a compilation album called A Brutal Christmas: The Season in Chaos. And I sent a copy of that to you, Steve. Did you get a chance to listen to that?
I have not had a chance to listen to it yet. I've been busy,
Yep.
doing stuff. But, stupidly, I put my headphones on, and then I get busy, and then like 3 hours later, I'm like, oh, how come I haven't listened to anything? I'm serious. It's so stupid.
I've done that.
Like my ears hurt, and I haven't even like done anything.
But when that album came out, I literally spent years trying to get my hands on a copy, and I finally did, like probably about 7 years after the fact, and it was fantastic. It's hard to get a hold of now.
What's it called?
Well, I sent it to you. It's in Dropbox.
Oh, never mind.
But it introduced me to some bands that I had never heard before, like Frost Like Ashes and Death Requisite. And it had a couple other bands on there that I'd heard before, like Keckle. Don't recommend listening to Keckle because they've since gone to become a Gnostic.
Agnostic or
no,
Gnostic?
Gnostic with a G.
That's kind of hard to get from Christianity to Gnosticism.
And yet they did that.
I mean, like the whole band became Gnostic. It's like one guy I could see like, hey guys, I'm really doing the Gnostic thing, but I'm like, I don't know.
But it also introduced me to Christmas songs I'd never heard of before, but it turned out they're traditional songs like the Coventry Carol, Let All Mortal Flesh Keep Silence.
Oh yeah, that's a beautiful one.
Well, Frost Like Ashes version wasn't, but that's fine. O Come Emmanuel, and Mary Did You Know? I had never heard that until this album.
Really?
Really?
Oh, you didn't grow up as a teenager in the 80s around Christmas time because it was all over the place all the time. But yeah, go ahead.
No, there wasn't nothing to go ahead about. It's just there was a lot of stuff on there that was interesting. And it's not all like death metal. I mean, there's some new metal in there, some funk metal, but I mean, there's also some grindcore and definite brutal death. Like the version of Little Drummer Boy on this is intense.
I'll have to check that out.
But but that was not only did that open my eyes for different ways to have Christmas carols performed, but it also opened my eyes to other traditions of Christmas carols, like the Coventry Carol. I had never heard of that before. Are you familiar with that one, Steve?
I know the title, but I couldn't hum you the song. So
it's a carol. It's a Christmas song. I think I want to say it dates back to the 1500s.
Yeah,
like it's an old song, but it's actually about the slaughter of the innocents. I think that is what it's called.
Yeah.
When King Herod had gone out to kill all the male children below 3 years old. And I had no concept of like they made songs about that. Like every Christmas song I'd ever heard was like Jesus was born, yay.
Yeah.
I mean, and so, but I mean, like it broadened my horizons as far as like lyric writing for anything. It's just like you don't have to address the main issues. There are side plots and characters that you can play with. I mean, I'm approaching it now from a storyteller standpoint. Like there are other ideas that you can mess with when it comes to Christmas music. I keep wanting to say Christian music, that too, but like talking about that, or people talk all the time about the Virgin Mary. Let's talk about Joseph and his experience with the whole nativity. I mean, how many songs do you know of that are about that?
Yeah.
And so it really opened my eyes up to a lot of that.
Yeah. Did you ever encounter the? It's not on Spotify, so don't go searching for it. But when DC Talk was huge and they were still rapping.
Okay, so pre-Jesus Freak.
Pre-Jesus Freak. Let me see if I can get the date actually. 1990. The company, the Forefront, they were on the Forefront label, and they put out an album with other people who were on the Forefront label, like ETW, Stephen Wiley, the Transformation Crusade, D-Boy, MCGG, and it was Christmas and rap music together, like for the first time, except for Run DMC, and the album is called Yo Ho Ho. Get it?
Pirate's Life for Me?
No. It's Yo Ho Ho, as in ho ho ho, but yo because yo is secret rap language, I guess.
Except when you say yo ho ho, I think pirate.
That's of course you do, yeah. But there's some really exceptionally, let's just say, different takes on some songs that you really didn't think could have anything to do with
different crappy.
Well, you know what? Just I don't want to.
You're veering towards different crappy, Steve.
I'll just say here's what the back of the album says. Okay, it says, so here's the deal. It's Christmas and rap is happening, and happening with there's no G. It's happening. Yo ho ho is in your face. Let's see. I think there's a word missing here. Have always wondered what Christmas would be with a hip MC. Well, here it is. Yo Ho Ho features your favorite Christian rappers coming correct for Christmas. Chill out, wrap it up. Get it? See, they did a little fun wrap it up there.
Like, this is so cringeworthy right now. Like,
I know it's like the cringeworthiest thing that it's. I mean, it's so. I mean, just DC Talk singing "Yo Ho Ho" as a Christmas thing. Anyway,
but I can't. It's just but here's the problem, though. If you put it in the context of the time period it was put out, that was the lingo.
That would have been
been like
it was dope.
Yeah.
It was hype.
It was funky fresh.
Funky fresh. It was chillin'. It was chill. Chill is still a word though, right?
Yeah, but it doesn't mean the same thing.
No.
I will say though, in recent years, the 112 click, I think is what they're called, which is
116.
116. That's it. Steve's hipper than I am.
I'm dope.
They recently put out a Christmas album as well on Reach Records.
Okay.
So we'll come back to that one in another 30 years to see how well that aged. And
I'm thinking it might age better than this one.
you think so?
Yeah.
Because here's the thing.
Mary Had a Little Lamb by MCGG.
Ugh.
Mary Had a Little Lamb. Get it?
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
But here's the thing though. Rock music ages like a fine wine. Rap music tends to age like milk.
a fine milk?
I don't think it matters at this point. And that's not a dig on rap music. I love rap music. But I have to calibrate myself before I sit down and listen to some Run DMC. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean the whole thing with there was so much sampling going on for like the first 20 years of rap, and then someone just said, okay, no one's going to sample anything anymore, and then like no one sampled anything for the longest time. I'm generalizing here, and it's like and now people sample stuff again, and I'm like, because you can do that, because I mean it's like living through that time, it was weird because it was like someone just slammed the door on any samples, and no one wanted to sample anything after Vanilla Ice had to go to court, to get his sample of David Bowie and Queen, and it was like no one wanted to get into trouble, so everyone was doing like their own music and stuff, which for good or bad. We could go into that if you really wanted to, but there was some good, so there was some bad, but it was just like I really dug getting to know other bands and other music through the samples, and seeing people's influences and seeing how it could be combined. And, I mean, Public Enemy, their lyrics are not God-honoring.
They're controversial. We'll say they're controversial.
Controversy in the rap world. And, but musically, I could sit there and listen to the music all day because it's just so deep. And how the Bomb Squad just took every type of genre of music, and I mean they sampled Slayer and Channel Zero. I mean it's like they didn't care who you were sampling. It's just it was music to them, and they wanted to bring that to the point where they could make a new art form out of it, and stuff like that. But then it is what it is. It's a lame saying, but to think about going back to those times and reproducing and recreating all that stuff, how Grandmaster Flash could do what he did with 2 turntables. It's like, wait a minute, how did you do that?
Well, and that's just the thing, though. A lot of modern artists are starting to go back to that. Like Bruno Mars with Uptown Funk. That's got a very 80s hip hop soul feel to it. Tech Nine, because I know you're a big Tech Nine.
I like Tech 7 and 8, Tech 6 a little bit, but Tech 9 I really haven't got that into much. I'm waiting for Tech 10.
We got the
Tech 11 though will be. Go ahead, I'm just joking.
No, you're fine. The thing about it though is Tech 9. He had a recent hit. I'm trying to look it up as I'm talking because the name of it is escaping me.
That's a good name for a song. Escaping Me.
That'd be a rap song for sure. It was off of Planet, so it was back in 2018. It was Don't Nobody Want None, and that had a very 808 sequencer feel. Like it was music you would expect to see somebody in an Adidas tracksuit come out with a cardboard box and just start doing flares and pinwheels on it, just break dancing.
Nice.
And it's just like for as hard as it is for me to go back to the old stuff like that, when modern groups take that and try to update it with a more modernized feel to it, I am so here for it. What this has to do with Christmas music, I don't know, but that was a rabbit
Yo
trail
ho ho.
I was here for.
Yo ho ho.
Yeah. So has there been anything, I would say, to bring it back around to the topic of the episode, has there been anything in recent years that you can recall that has, like, because I mean, you've been around long enough to have seen, the
World War
Deliverance
II,
doing.
World War One.
Okay.
Well, Striper with Reason for the Season was fantastic.
Right,
I mean,
but you've been around long enough to see the metal bands bust out the Christmas music and stuff like that. Has there been anything that has kind of caught you off guard within recent years that you like? I would never have expected to have seen.
Rob Halford's Christmas album.
You're kidding! I didn't even know about this.
I think he has 2 of them now.
Really?
Yeah. Which is odd because, without getting into the problematic lifestyle of Rob Halford, you wouldn't expect him to have a softness for the Christmas season, but here you are, listening to Rob Halford singing, hymns to baby Jesus, O come, Emmanuel, and
I would
Light
love
of the
to hear
World.
him sing "O Come, Emmanuel." That would be. Was it good?
Well, it's Rob Halford. I mean, he still has his voice.
Yeah, he has taken care of it.
Yeah.
Is it better than? Does he do it better than Dee Snider?
I'd have to listen to both of them next to each other. Not to take anything away from Dee Snider, but his voice is more. What's the word I'm looking for? It's like when I think of Rob Halford, it's that
Rob Halford's is more refined. Is what you're saying.
It's a refined scream, where Dee Snider's is more of a
snotty
like
in
a
the face.
Yeah, something like that. And I mean, like I said, I think Dee Snider has a deeper, a better range of voices that he puts into his songs.
Mm-hmm.
Rob Halford, and I'm not taking anything away from Rob Halford's voice, but I mean, he sticks with what he knows. He does the couple of things that he does and does them extremely well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where you wouldn't have like Slayer's Christian album, you wouldn't expect that.
No.
So if they did something like that, you would just be like, okay, this is something that it's offensive, just because of who they are. Just because of who they are. Or like Ghost or Marilyn Manson, if they tried to do a Christmas song, you would hear the venom in it, the vitriol. And with Rob Halford, he wants to sing Christmas songs,
mm-hmm.
and that's what he does.
Mm-hmm.
Let me check one thing, because I don't know if I haven't heard this. Have I heard this? I'm not sure, but Christopher Lee actually has a heavy metal Christmas album. Christopher Lee.
I did know that he's done a few heavy metal albums. I didn't know he did a Christmas album, but
yeah,
I'll be honest with you. Knowing the guy, you could say he did anything.
Yeah,
and it wouldn't shock me. Christopher Lee is probably one of the most interesting people who have ever walked.
Yeah. Well, one of the songs off of his Christmas album is "Jingle Hell." So, take it for what it's worth with him. I don't, it's. I'm not advertising any of these.
For the listeners out there who aren't familiar with who Christopher Lee was, he'd be one of the 4 people I'd put on the Mount Rushmore of these. He's up there with Vincent Price and
Bela Lugosi. Bela Lugosi.
No, I wouldn't put him up there. Bela
Really?
Lugosi did Dracula and pretty much nothing else to remark on after that.
And he did Dracula and like 28 other things.
He was also in Plan 9 from Outer Space for all of 5 minutes.
As Dracula.
But I would put Bela Lugosi,
You mean
Boris
Christopher Lee?
Karloff, Christopher Lee. Did I say Bela Lugosi again?
Yeah, but I
meant
knew you
Vincent
didn't mean
Price.
him. Yeah.
I meant Vincent Price, Christopher Lee, Boris Karloff, and
Michael Jackson.
No. I always forget the guy's last name, and it's driving me nuts.
What is he? What did he do? Peter,
he was in Star Wars as
Peter Cushing.
Peter Cushing, thank you.
Yep.
My
favorite Doctor Who.
He was a doctor. He was a doctor?
In the movies. They did
okay.
a couple of movie Doctor Who's that don't have anything to do with, well, I don't know what the canon is like now, because I think they opened it up and made like every single iteration of Doctor Who that ever existed an actual Doctor Who that existed in the actual canon. I think that's what they did. So they may have backdoored, all these other people who did Doctor Who in. But at the time, Doctor Who was just this other thing out there, and they were like, hey, we want to make a movie. Hey, that Doctor Who TV show is interesting. Why don't we make a couple of movies out of that guy? And then it just became the phenomenon that it is. But just one of those weird things. Yeah, Peter Cushing.
Yeah, I always forget his name. I always want to call him Peter Lorre, and I know that's wrong.
Peter Lorre is another amazing actor that I might put.
I don't know that I would put him on my Rushmore, though.
Have you heard him do... it's an old-time radio version of The Horla by Guy de Maupassant. Do you know The Horla? Oh, man. Classic horror by a classic short story horror writer / in the middle there. Done by Peter Lorre. I don't want to ruin it for you, so I'll send you a link to the one that I'm talking about, because I think he might have done it more than one time, and I want to make sure it's the right one, because absolutely, I mean... mind-blowing ending to how he anyway. But anyway, yeah, Peter Lorre, I would say. What this has to do with Christmas music, I guess it goes back to Christopher Lee.
Right. I was trying to give some clarification to our listeners about why Christopher Lee would create a song called Jingle Hell, or
right.
Because he has his fan base in horror films.
Right.
Just to throw a little context out there, good gosh, that guy! Did you know he was actually at the last public execution in Europe?
Christopher Lee was.
Mm-hmm. It was the last public beheading by a guillotine
in like 1930 something
like that.
Yeah,
that guy was the guy was a Nazi hunter post World War II. He was seriously. Listeners out there, if you get a chance, go read up about Christopher Lee. That guy is super interesting. But getting back to Christmas music again, it's kind of interesting though, because this conversation has gone everywhere except for where I expected it to, having this conversation with you, because typically you're the guy who's going to be like, well, actually, did you know back in 14 whatever when they wrote this, it actually signified that blah blah blah. And so I was, you're kind of catching me off guard with all these non-historical facts you're bringing to the table today.
Well, what were you expecting exactly?
I don't know, man. You're like the deep theologian when it comes to music, and I figured Christmas music, you'd open up your wings and let me tell you something about Christmas music.
Well, I mean, it's in some ways it's nice to turn on the radio and every one out of every 5 or 10 songs actually has a positive reference to Jesus, or something biblical, even if it's We Three Kings or something like that. But it's the glut of Christmas music that you never hear again after the single is done, or whatever. It's listening to. I brought up old time radio. I listened to a lot of Christmas episodes of old time radio shows, and they put together this wonderful, beautiful song that has to do with Christmas, and they have their tenor sing it, and everyone claps, and tears in their eyes, and people, oh, that's such a wonderful song. And for whatever reason, they didn't put it out as a single. It didn't get put on any albums, and it disappeared. And the only time you'll hear it is if you listen to an entire episode of Old Time Radio, and then you hear the song. And I'm like, there's some beautiful, beautiful music that no one is ever in any quantity going to hear. And at some level, I'm like, why doesn't someone, not me, because I don't have that much time. Why doesn't someone go into these Christmas episodes and just rip out those little 2-minute, 3-minute songs?
I can tell you why.
Why?
Copyrights.
There's no copyrights to them. It's Old Time Radio.
Old Time Radio is copyrighted, my dude.
It may be copyrighted, but wherever the copyright lies, nobody knows. So if it's copyrighted, then nobody is claiming the copyright except for a couple of things, like obviously Superman is still under DC, and the Shadows, Condé Nast has that. So there's a couple of things you can't have, but other than that, the Jack Benny shows, the Frank Sinatra. I mean, so these huge names of people that are still around today, and these episodes are out there, just waiting for someone to do something with them. And it's one of those legal gray areas, but the gray area is so shaded white that it's like barely gray at all. Mm-hmm. And at some points you're just looking at it saying, is that gray or is it just white? It's like that dress. Is it gray or white?
I'm not
remember the gray
dress, sir.
Remember the gray and white dress? There was an internet dress or something, and then someone's had a word that sounded something. Anyway, we can fix this in post. Anyway, so
editing.
But there's a ton of stuff that's still out there that nobody, I mean, just to try to make a claim for it would be sort of outrageous, sort of ridiculous. And as soon as one person would be like, I'm, Jack Benny's third great-grandchild or something, well, the second great-grandchild is going to sue you for, and then the first great-grandchild, and then the fourth one, and then you're going to get all these, and it's like, who really, owns this stuff? And the people who put it out, I mean, there are some people who clean them up and package them and sell them, and that's cool. But the raw stuff is out there in thousands of hours, tens of thousands of hours of this stuff that it's the theater of the mind. Mm-hmm. You don't have to, you can drive around in a car. I had it in my bus, for the people who were sitting there with nothing else to do except to twiddle their thumbs or look on their phones. And they were digging it. It was Abbott and Costello, and one guy was laughing his head off. And I mean, just these old episodes, and you can see them play out in your head. You hear the thump, 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 thump. Oh, someone's coming down from upstairs. Mm-hmm. And you can immediately picture it. It's like the kitchen table. And I mean, the whole thing, it's like you don't even need a TV screen. Just
a lot of that's starting to come back though with the whole podcast culture. Podcasting is kind of the new OTR at this point. Yeah. Because you have the talk programs like they had in the OTR. You've got
dramatized
editorial.
Yeah.
There's dramatized stuff out there. You and me are involved with Supersonic Pod Comics.
Yeah.
And Branson on the Geek Devotion Network, he's started up a Gospel by Gaslight, which I am also involved in.
That's cool. But yeah, it's like when Queen put out Radio Gaga, mm-hmm. and it was talking about how, all the radio just seems like gaga, it's just nonsense nowadays. Obviously they were hyperbolizing, but at one point they, how does the lyrics go? It was I haven't heard it in such a long time, but it's a beautiful song.
All I remember is all we hear is Radio
Gaga, Radio blah blah. And then it says at one point in the song, it mentions that the best is still to come. That like there's something out there for radio, mm-hmm. for that art form. And he's talking about old time radio.
Mm-hmm.
He's not talking about the, and he's talking about nowadays where it's just all sports and, there's tons and tons of music, but it's like, how many music stations can you possibly, listen to? And what was coming, obviously he didn't know, but what was coming, when I listen to that song now, I'm like, yes, this is what was coming. This is the new old time radio. This is the new version of it,
Mm-hmm.
where it's not on the radio, but it's the same, like you said, same type of content, some for better and some for worse.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, there's a lot for worse, but it is kind of sad, because I searched a website recently and it was like, best podcasts, that type of stuff, and it listed a whole bunch of different kinds and all this different stuff, and I downloaded a whole bunch of them, like the first episodes, and I was like wildly unimpressed, it was sad, because it's like, this is what people they think is the best, and I could easily point them to old time radio shows that would blow this out of the water in multiple ways. But
I think a lot of people jump into it without realizing how much work goes into making it. You gotta have the music, you gotta have the Foley, you gotta have,
everything.
Yeah.
Yep, the whole package. And back then, you had one person, or maybe a small team, doing the sound effects. You had a 10 or 20 piece orchestra doing the sound. You had this, and people on the payroll. People were making money.
Paid what? Who gets paid to do this?
That's right. So, unless you have all that stuff ready to go, it's difficult. It really is. And getting people to be interested in your idea without them getting paid, it's like a crowbar to the head.
Yep. How fast can you write a script?
It depends on what do you want to do?
We should make a OTR Christmas script. Have the people in the Geek Devotions team do it.
Did you hear this? You've heard every single Strangers and Aliens, right?
Yeah. Now, whether or not I remember every single episode is completely different.
But do you remember the one that I did? It was a Christmas parody of The Shadow.
I think so.
But
I
it was
remember
Santa Claus?
guys have done a couple. You guys have done a couple OTR scripts.
But I wrote the script, and it was like The Shadow was actually Santa Claus. And, instead of Margot Lane, it was Candy Cane. So it was like little puns and things like that. And it was just like an 8-minute script. So I have done that before. But yeah, we could, if you want to, we could kick something around and we could put something out.
Nah, Steve, just put it together. I'll cast it and we'll get on it, because we're at the point now where we gotta crank that puppy out.
Well, give me some particulars.
Well,
comedy, horror, superheroes, all of the above?
Let's wait until after we're done recording, because
okay, we'll do that.
So let's start to land this plane a little bit and it's usually how it goes with us, because we like to talk, and we like to talk a lot.
What? No.
So let's bring this back to a similar question to what we started with. If Steve was going to define what the perfect Christmas song was, what would be necessary for that song?
The perfect Christmas song.
Mm-hmm.
I actually have one in mind.
What's that? Now you can't just say that without telling me.
It's what's the name of the band? I'm gonna search real quick just so I don't get the name of the band wrong. I know the name of the song. By the Ball Brothers. It's a song called "It's About the Cross."
Mm.
And it's not all about the baby underneath the tree. It's not all about and it talks about all the things that it's not about, and then it gives the gospel, which is missing in 999,999 out of a million songs about Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
And this one actually has the gospel in it, and it's touching, it's well done, it's a cappella, and it's a beautiful Christmas song, and it's a beautiful Christian song, and it's a beautiful gospel song, and it's just amazing. How many songs, All I Want for Christmas, or, What's Under the Tree, or Mommy Kissing Santa Claus, or, all these different things that they're fun and they're funny, but they pull away from what is going on. What's the big deal about this baby 2,000 years ago being born? It's like, what's the big deal? The big deal is, 30 some odd years later when he dies for everybody's sins.
Right.
And it's like, what? I have sin? What does sin mean? Well, there's two places you go when you die. This can be heaven and it can be hell. And he saves you from that. He's the only person who can do that. Repentance and faith in Jesus Christ as Savior and Lord. And it's like this beautiful song just brings it right out. It's like every Christmas, I'm like, I want to listen to that song and just have it on repeat the entire time, because what other song has the actual gospel in it?
I will mirror your concept, although I didn't think about it until you were talking, because I don't think the song has ever been seen as a Christmas song until I was listening to you, and then I started thinking about the gospel presentation in that. And I will say that this one goes the other direction, and it lays into the prophetic side of the birth of Christ a little bit harder than it does the cross. And it's a Rich Mullins song called "My Deliverer." I think you're familiar with that song.
I don't know if I have.
It was off of his album that was released post-mortem, the Jesus album. It wasn't.
Pretty sure I have that one.
It wasn't recorded by Rich Mullins because he died after he demoed it out.
Okay.
And then
who did it?
It was basically the album that all his friends recorded.
Right. Which is a cool concept.
Mm-hmm. And it was the first track on there. I think you got to have heard it, because when that album came out, it was all over the news. It's the one where it's like, my deliverer is coming, my deliverer is standing by. That song.
I've probably heard it, but I did not listen to a lot of Christian radio in the 90s. So there's a lot that I missed. I actually put together on Spotify a whole list of 90s music where I'm like researching it and finding these cool bands and these cool albums and stuff, and I put it all into one big thing. And the name of the playlist. See if you get it. The name of the playlist is D. Get it? Because there's 9 Ds.
Oh.
9 Ds. 90s. Anyway, you can search for it that way if you really want to. But it just has, it's a dump list right now. It's like I haven't, preened the list or anything like that. There's a couple of songs I think I listened to and I got rid of. But there's a lot of stuff in there. I just put it on when I just want to get that 90s sense to whatever however I'm thinking, whatever. And there's some really good stuff in there. I'm surprised at how much stuff I missed in the 90s when it comes to like pop and rock and things like that, because I was just so into genre heavy music. I was into, techno and rap and metal and punk and, all the hard stuff or the deep stuff, and like the Jars of Clay. I was just like, whoa. But now I'm listening to them. I'm like, okay, I get it. It's like Petra for the 90s. All right, now okay. Sort of, a little bit. But yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff in there. Also, if anyone's interested, I made a list of, and this is something that I do. I really enjoy older music. So I have lists of songs that are, 100-year-old jazz, 100-year-old blues, 100-year-old hymns, things like that. And I have a whole thing with classical music too, 100-year-old overtures, 100-year-old symphonies, 100-year-old concerti, 100-year-old suites, Baroque. And they're all recordings that were made 100 years ago or close to it. With the
Mhm.
classical music, I've found some stuff that's so good closer to the 1950s that like I sneak in 40s and early 50s, but for the most part they're 100-year-old stuff. And I found some albums, some not albums, but they were single records that were 78s. A lot of people, you're going to have to explain this to them, but
Mhm.
the records you buy nowadays are 33 and a third. It talks about the revolutions per minute for the actual album.
Or
The
45.
45s, yeah, what? Yeah, it's the 45s are the small ones. That's 45 revolutions per minute. And then they made these older records called 78s, which are 78 revolutions per minute. And this is massively boring. That's why I'm just cutting to the chase. These songs were put on 78 records, and they somehow made their way onto Spotify. So I have, Auld Lang Syne by Vaughn Monroe and his orchestra. It's the 78 RPM version, and it's just big band stuff, or and some of the songs are stuff I've never heard of, and I've heard a lot of stuff, and I mean, or not heard of in a long time. Hello, Mr. Kringle. It doesn't snow on Christmas Day. But then it has some classics. Jingle Bells, Came Upon a Midnight Clear, Let It Snow, Let It Snow, Let It Snow. And, I found 30 records, 30 songs that were put out on 78s. And I just put them it's an hour and a half Christmas list. So, it's not a lot of heavy lifting there. But, and it's just a fun list that I put together. I have another one that's Sinatra, just, Sinatra on 78. And it's one of those things where these older styles of music, there's still something to them where you get the entire group of people and they practice and practice and practice to a point where they can't get the song wrong. And then they go into the studio and then they record it, and it's like nowadays, that's not how most bands record. I guess some do, but it's you record the guitar riff 100 times and then you take the best one. Here you go. Everyone has to be on the entire time.
Oh yeah.
And it can be some amazing music. I mean, it's the same thing with the old time radio stuff. They're live. Everything is live.
Yeah, back in that day, it was very much like what you saw on the movie "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou," where it's just you sing into the can.
Yep, and sometimes it was a can.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and land this ship. Steve,
I thought we started to do that a long time ago.
Yeah, but you got on some interesting information, and I didn't want to break that. Why don't you go ahead and send me some of the links to those playlists that you got on Spotify? We'll put those in the show notes so the listeners can hear those lists if they're interested. I will also include the link to the playlist I am making for the Geek Devotions family. So if you guys want to hear the irregular Christmas music, please check that out. Steve, where can people find you on the internet?
Right here. I'm right here. Where can they find me on the internet? You mean like my email address?
Well, whatever information you want to share as far as other podcasts or if you want
Strangers and Aliens. But my email address is just long and confusing, so I don't give it to a lot of people. I guess if someone really wanted to contact me, and it's probably going to put you into my spam folder, so if you try to contact me, just contact me on Facebook, right? No, yeah. I hardly ever look at Facebook. Well, I look at it about every week because we record every week or every other week. That's about the only time I ever go on. So, yeah, just find me on Facebook, Steve McDonald. You could also put in, let me just check to make sure this is still accurate information. I think you can put in, okay, it's Facebook. No, it's even more confusing. Why am I so confusing? Anyway.
Because you're Steve and it's what you do.
Anyway, I'm one of the Steve McDonalds there in Facebook. I'll just give my email address in case someone really wanted to contact me, but I'm going to say it and then I'm going to spell it because it's long and stupid, just like me. So it's steveandkrista@me.com, which is no spaces, no dots or anything, SteveandChrista @me.com. So that's the whole thing spelled out.
All right. And as far as my contacts, you can check the Linktree link in the show notes. Specifically, if you want to check out some stuff other stuff that Steve and I do together, feel free to check us out at Playing Games with Strangers, which is an actual play D&D podcast that we do with some other members of the Geek Devotions team, as well as other members of the Supersonic Podcomics team, which is an audio drama that Steve and I also are involved in. So go check that out as well. Those are my 2 that I do per episode. So we want to thank you guys for listening to this episode of Primitive Rhythm Machine. This is the music portion of the Com Talk podcast division of Geek Devotions Network, the network devoted to letting you know that you are loved. So if you get nothing else out of this episode, just know that you are loved, you are cared for, and the purpose for your life. I am John. That is Steve. You've been listening to Primitive Rhythm Machine. Thanks for listening. Good night.